Welcome back. All right, so news of the day video for all you fine people on the internet today. Starting off with injury news, and of course there's going to be injury news because it's that time of year. It's hockey season. Kalanick and Hagel are both out tonight for Chicago. They're hoping to have Hagel back for the next game. Kalanick, no idea. But yeah, so hopefully Hagel's not out for too long. Again, Chicago off to a really slow start. Hagel's been great though, so we'll see how long he's out and what the situation is with him going forward. But yeah, so Chicago dealing with a little bit of injury issues here, and we'll see how they go. Detroit also, Troy Stecher, and it's an undisclosed injury, but he's seeing a specialist for it. So Detroit being kind of cloak and dagger about the whole thing. They have been with various things this year. Larkin, for instance, just away for personal reasons, and he's back. And Stecher out. We don't know what the injury is, but we know he needs to see a specialist. So Troy Stecher, who was always a popular player when he was in Vancouver, always liked him. Always seemed like a very personable guy, and hopefully things go well for Stecher from here. Hopefully he's not out for too long. The Pittsburgh Penguins have settled a lawsuit brought upon them by Erin Skaldes, the wife of Jared Skaldes. So that's a lawsuit that's been out there. That's for a sexual assault case that goes back a couple years that involved Clark Donatelli, and a belief that the Pittsburgh Penguins didn't deal with it fast enough. And of course, that also snared Bill Guerin. And so with this being settled, I don't know that affects Bill Guerin's standing, as he was set to be named as the GM for the American Olympic team. So I don't know if this lawsuit being settled necessarily changes things. I know that this is just basically a case of, you go with the lawsuit settlement because you want it done with so you can move on, right? Both the team and, in this case, the people bringing about the lawsuit. But it is one of those things that, we'll see. We'll see if that's the last we hear of it or if there's any other fallout. But at this point, it looks like the Penguins having settled it is probably the last that we'll hear about it publicly. And again, we'll see whether or not it affects their hiring of Bill Guerin as the GM, which again has not been announced yet. It is just rumored that that's what's going to happen. So yeah, that's settled, and that's set aside. And at the same time, we haven't heard anything about the Hawks having a settlement with Kyle Beach. They said all the things about settling, but we haven't seen that yet. So yeah, that's still out there. The Colorado Avalanche have called up Alex Newhook, who I reported yesterday in my AHL video. Off to a very good start, 11 points in 10 games for the Colorado Eagles. And now he's called up, and it may have something to do with the fact McKinnon wasn't at practice today. It's a lower body injury. They haven't confirmed that he's not going to be in the lineup tonight that I've seen as of yet, but it's possible. And so Newhook might be jumping in. For the Colorado Avalanche, of course, if McKinnon's out and if he's hurt, and of course he was out of the lineup for a while not that long ago. And with the Colorado Avalanche being off to a rough start, pretty brutal schedule for them to start the season, it's just another thing, which again, if they overcome all of this, and if next June we're talking about them as Stanley Cup champs, we can look back on this and say that's what they had to go through in order to get over the hump and become champs. For Nashville, dealing with some injury concerns as well. Forsberg is now on the IR. He's seen as week to week. Cousins is also week to week for Nashville. So they've called up Olivier and McCarron. Olivier, good energy player, can chip in points here and there. McCarron, of course, experienced player, should blend into the lineup seamlessly. The problem being that neither of them are going to score the kind of points Forsberg would have. So it's going to be on guys like Jeannot to really, keep producing and keep making up for the loss of Forsberg, which is not easy to do. But I think Nashville, the way that they score by committee, they might be able to do it. I mentioned in the video I did this morning on teams off to slow starts and which coaches might be on the hot seat, teams that were struggling when they got scored on first, and that seemed to be the general rule with a lot of those teams, that if they get scored on first, they lose the games. Minnesota's at the opposite end of that. When they are scored on first, they are 5-2. So it is remarkable to see the number of comebacks the Minnesota Wild have been capable of. And the interesting thing, too, is I think it allows fans of teams that have lost against Minnesota to say, well, yeah, they had him, and then Minnesota just kind of fluked out and came back. And I think there's some room for people to kind of say that, to brush it aside. But so far, this 8-3 start's been fantastic for Minnesota. I'm looking forward to seeing how far they can go with this. And they've been doing this while it feels like Kaprizov hasn't really hit his stride yet. He's been better in, I'll say, the last 3 or 4 games, but I don't think he's really hit his stride yet. And when he does, this team could be even better, right? Luke Schenn is now week to week for the Vancouver Canucks. They had believed that it was just a little day-to-day thing, but Travis Green admitting it could be a little bit longer, so now they're looking at it as a week-to-week thing. The good news is with Hamonic back in the lineup, there's no rush with Luke Schenn that he has to come back. And I think Kyle Burroughs has kind of been pretty decent for Vancouver. As I pointed out in a Vancouver video I did the other day, their defense, their numbers on the blue line have been pretty good. So with Luke Schenn out, they should be okay. And so we'll keep our eye on that. So the Utica Comets, the reason that I'm wearing my Utica Comets jersey here in white, New Jersey colors, of course. They tweeted about Cole Caulfield over the weekend, and it's got some attention from the American Hockey League. At the time that they tweeted about it, it also got the attention of some in media and former players and whatnot, and it didn't seem to go over well. And word has it that Cole Caulfield's dad wasn't happy about it either. That they tweeted at him basically, "Hey, we're through the first period, and are you here?" kind of thing. Which, and we've seen Twitter accounts chirp at one another. Basically, the way that this looks, the league isn't happy with, and has apparently reprimanded Utica over this. So the social media manager for Utica, probably in a little bit of hot water here. But I think if you're going to chirp, I think you chirp the team, not the player. That's the general, I think, feeling on this. And with Caulfield right now, this has to be a tough time for him, right? There's a lot of pressure on him, and I don't know how fair that is, but it's just standard with young players in the NHL that you come in, you have a lot of hype, there's a lot of pressure. And when you're a young player for the Montreal Canadiens, that pressure it's a lot. It really is. So I think the argument was they probably shouldn't have tweeted at the player. It's kind of looking like, hey, harass a player kind of thing. It's fine. It's funny. And while there are many who will say, oh, that's amusing what they did, I think if they had tweeted that at Laval, if they had tagged the Laval Rocket in it and had kind of a go back and forth, like we see in the NHL all the time, and I love it when I see teams' Twitter accounts kind of arguing back and forth during a game. I think it would have been fine, but I think it's because they actually tagged Caulfield that's what caused the league to say, hey, you can't be doing that. So we'll see what happens from here. But Utica, they did tweet out. First off, they removed the tweet, and then they said, hey, we were all kidding. He's a great player, and so we'll see. That's blown over for now, and hopefully for Caulfield, he does get his game back in the AHL, because it can be tough, and this is where I really do think that, for pro athletes, it's a job where you can be really revered and loved and everybody thinks you're great. And then within weeks, you could end up being in the minors. You could end up being, asked all these questions about why aren't you better? And your answer might be, I don't know. I don't know what's gone wrong. And I'm sure for players like Caulfield, probably doesn't know exactly what's gone wrong here. So hopefully gets it right in Laval. And for Utica, keep up the amusing tweets. They're very good at them. And just tag the other team like we often see in the NHL. I know whenever an account tweets at the Nashville Predators about, hey, make another banner about it, the Nashville account usually does. They'll Photoshop up a banner and go, all right, fine. And it's funny because, of course, Nashville with their banners. Tonight for Seattle, they will get Chris Driedger back in the net. Now, of course, Driedger was one of the players that they brought out publicly when they revealed their expansion team. And I think Driedger was basically envisioned as probably being the starter for year one. The money they gave him, I think it's $4.5 million a year for 3 years. I think that tells you they had visions of him as probably being the number one. And then they were able to get Grubauer on the free agent market, right? And they were like, okay, so now we can have Grubauer and Driedger. So Grubauer's goaltending lately has been inconsistent. I think we can agree. Seattle's lost some games they probably should have won. And it feels like they've been out goaltended in those games. So if Drieger can come back and play the way he did in Florida last year, that could go a long way to helping Seattle even their record and maybe make some gains. Because right now, it does feel like that division's pretty wide open. And so for Seattle, there is the possibility they could get in there because Vegas has been average at 500 so far. You have the 2 Alberta teams performing very well. You have the 3 California teams surprisingly competitive. But how many of those teams are really going to stay at that level? There's room there if Seattle gets it together now to climb back into a playoff spot. So having that goaltending that's at least equal to the goaltending at the other end, because all the other stats tell you they're performing very well. They just haven't had the puck luck at the other end, and then they haven't been getting the saves they need at the other end. And whether that's on the defense, whether that's on the goaltending, it's still early in the season. They should be able to figure that out, and we'll see if getting Drieger back helps to improve things. So there you go. Little news of the day for all you fine people. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.